What's up, guys? Welcome to Seafood Kitchen Barbecue. This week we're going to be doing a whole smoked turkey. Holidays are coming up and we want to put a good meal on the table for the family. We're going to be cooking about a 14-pound bird today. We've had that brining for 18 hours or so. Let's jump in and take a look at that. Alright, here is our bird. Picked this up frozen and thawed it out. It's 13.68 pounds, it's a good size. And you'll see here is this 8% solution. That's how much they inject the turkey to fatten them up. So you want to be careful and get that as low as possible. Let's go ahead and get this out of its bag. We're going to start by trimming off anything that you would not want to eat. Extra skin, cartilage, pieces of bone. Just take your time and go through this bird. Make sure it's as clean as you want it to be. And we're going to come underneath the skin and above the meat. And we're going to go ahead and separate that skin from the meat. We're going to be seasoning inside of here later, and it'll also help our brine soak into the meat itself without having to battle through that skin. Make sure you turn it around. You want to get under all the skin. Give it one last look over before we continue on here. Looks good, so let's get started with the brine. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull out a stock pot. My apple cider was fridge cold, so we want to bring that up to temperature, easy enough to dissolve in that salt and sugar there. I got a gallon here of unfiltered apple juice or apple cider. You want those solids in there, those are going to break down and help flavor that meat for us. We're just going to let this sit on a medium heat. We're trying to bring it up to room temperature, maybe a little higher. We don't want to cook the bird in it, but we want to be able to dissolve 1 cup of kosher salt and a cup of packed brown sugar. We're going to go ahead and break this down into the apple juice and make sure it's completely dissolved. I'm going to leave this on the heat just to be certain that everything is soaked in there. We don't want any granules floating around. We want this to be a really viscous mixture. And give it one last stir here. I've got a cooler here. I wiped this down with bleach last night, let it air dry overnight, make sure it was nice and clean to soak our bird in. You need a big enough vessel and something that's going to keep it cold while it chills overnight. Alright, now that we have that brine mixture down in the bottom here, we're going to come in and add 10 cloves of garlic that have been smashed, let some of those flavors out, and 2 inches of ginger sliced. This is going to be kind of our flavor base. We're going to follow that up with 4 quartered oranges and 2 quartered apples. Give that a nice mix there, make sure everything's incorporated. And we're going to chase that with a bottle of your favorite hard cider. And in comes the bird. You want to make sure that your container is large enough to hold the bird that you have. Really work it down in there, make sure it's got a good seat. Those oranges and apples are going to prevent it from getting all the way to the bottom. We're going to top that off with enough water to bring it up to the top. We want to leave room because we're going to be adding some ice later, and we want to make sure that we have that bird completely submerged. Here we have our fresh herbs. It's a handful of sage, rosemary, and thyme sprigs. We're going to stuff that down into the cavity of the bird, and that's going to get that meat flavored from the inside out. Alright, once everybody's sitting pretty, we're going to come in with our ice. I'm going to use as much ice as I can fit in this cooler and still be able to seal it properly. I want to make sure that turkey stays nice and cold while we're doing this process because we're not going to be able to fit this vessel in my refrigerator. And we'll let that go for 16-18 hours. Alright, now that the turkey's ready to go, we're going to start the fire in the pit. We've got hickory chunks going on the fire today. We're going to be smoking about 275 to 300 degrees internal deck temperature. We're going to be shooting for 165 internal meat temperature on the breast and about 185 in the dark meat. That hickory should give us a real nice flavor, go with the holiday flavors we got going in the brine, so let's get started. let's get our injection started. I've got 2 sticks of butter melting down over the firebox here. We're going to bring in a 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar and follow that up with a 1/4 cup of really good maple syrup. Alright, we're going to wash this down with about a 1/4 cup of your favorite bourbon. This is going to go really well with the maple and brown sugar in there and make a great glaze later on. We just want to melt this down until everything's well incorporated. We're not trying to boil it or cook it down or anything, but we do want that sugar to dissolve into the butter. Alright, let's get our bird out of the bath here. It's been in for about 18 hours. I wouldn't go much more than 24. It's a big piece of meat, so it can stand up to quite a bit of abuse. But let's go ahead and drain off all of the brine that we can. It's been sitting in there quite a long time, so we want to make sure that we're going to get all of that off of there. We're going to give it a real good pat down, but don't forget about the herbs on the inside. If we leave those in, they're going to end up burning, so we want to make sure and get out all of the bunch and any little bits left behind. Alright, we're going to dry this thing thoroughly, pat every surface down. We're going to come in with some canola oil, and this is what's going to be our binder and get that rub to stick on the outside. Alright, time to get this injection in. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, as soon as we started filming this, I had no idea that my injector was cracked, so I couldn't suck up any liquid. It was disastrous. I ended up getting it done. It wasn't pretty, so I'm gonna skip right through that. Took me about 25 minutes, but I ended up getting this bird injected.
Almost lost my cool there.
Alright, now that it's injected, we're going to get right down to the rub. Got that canola oil tacked up on there, so it should stick real well. We're going to get every inch of this bird that we can, top, bottom, left, right. And then once we've got the outside sufficiently covered, we're going to go ahead and take a palmful, big palmful, and season underneath the skin so it gets straight to the meat. And make sure you attack that from both sides as well, getting the best coverage that you can. Alright, time to truss this bird. I've got some butcher's twine here. I'm going to pull out about 6 feet, an arm length, and we're going to go under the end of the drumsticks, cross over, and I'm going to try and get these under the elbows of the wings. It sounds really complicated, but once you're looking down at the bird doing this for yourself, you'll see what I'm talking about. We're going to go under both wings and pull that tight back around the cavity opening, and what this is going to do is tighten up this bird so it cooks more evenly. Give it a good solid knot. We're going to fold those wing tips underneath the string so they're hugged real close to the body, and we'll go ahead and cut off the rest of our string. Alright, and just to recap, we took that string, we're going over the drumsticks, crossing, and then going under the elbows of each wing and tying it right behind the cavity. This is a good time to touch up any of that rub. Trussing these up can be a traumatic experience, so we'll make sure we got that really well covered. And then it's time to get this thing off into the smoker. Alright, we're going to lay this down so that your drumsticks are about halfway down your smoke chamber. Take your time and get a really good accurate placement of your meat thermometer here as well, away from the bone. We'll be ready to go. Get our first chunks on the fire here. We've had these preheating. This hickory is going to give us a great flavor. I'm really looking forward to this cook. Alright, it's about 9:30. We got this bird on. We're looking forward to about a 4-hour cook. Alright guys, take a look at this. It is so windy in my backyard today. and we got to deal with that. It's just one of those things you got to deal with when you're running a stick burner. I'm going to pull over a chair, and I've got some of this pegboard here, and I'm going to make a barrier, something that isn't going to blow over in the wind, but it's going to let that smoke come up just a little bit higher than the chimney, so it's not sucking it out of the top. I'm also going to take this table and block off the firebox, try and get a good heat flow to maintain while it's cooking in this wind. Alright, we're about an hour and a half in, and look at this bird. We're getting some great color on it. We're going to go ahead and spin this so it cooks evenly. I want to be real careful here, make sure that you got enough room on your thermometer. But there we go, we'll come check on it in about an hour. Alright, look at this, man. I'm super stoked with the way this skin's coming out, but I don't want it to take on any more color, so I'm going to come in and just tent it with some tin foil. This isn't going to hold in any moisture, we just want to keep it from taking up any more color. So we're just going to do a real light tint. We're going to let that run for another 45 minutes or so. Alright, we're about half hour from being done with this bird. I made a fresh batch of that injection glaze from earlier, just so it didn't have that raw poultry on it, and I'm going to baste this bird thoroughly. This glaze is going to give it an awesome finish, nice and shiny. Once we got that set, we're going to let it roast away for another half hour and finish the cook, come up to temp. Oh my, look at this. I would think anybody would be happy to have this on their table at Thanksgiving. That glaze is tacked up and it is just decadent. The skin's still crispy underneath, it's got a nice sheen to it, all that sugar's caramelized. Let's go ahead and drain out the cavity. That's got a lot of excess moisture in it. And another thing, when you smoke a turkey, you are going to have pink meat and pink juices. What you really need to be careful of is making sure you've got the correct internal temperature. That's 165 degrees in the white meat and 185 degrees in the dark meat. Don't be concerned, and don't let your guests be concerned if you're smoking a turkey and they see that pink meat or pink juices. Once it's rested for about a half hour, you guys are going to be good to go. I'm going to spin this thing around and get to carving. We'll go right into the breast here, take off a couple of slices. The skin didn't stick quite as much as I had liked it to, but that's alright. This is juicy, tender meat. Look at that. So juicy, so tender, just falling apart in my hand. It's even got a little smoke ring on there. Pretty quick cook. I'm going to go ahead and trim the rest of this off camera because I'm terrible at carving turkeys. There you go, guys, whole smoked turkey. It's got that bourbon maple glaze on the outside, it's got that barbecue rub inside and out, and it had that awesome apple cider brine. We had quite a few challenges during this cook, but that's the nature of the beast, and the outcome is worth every minute of it. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed that episode on whole smoked turkey. We had a good time cooking this, hope you did too. The recipe's in the description below, so check that out. We'll see you next week on Seafood Kitchen Barbecue.